What's up, kitchen table wizards? What's up, deck brewers from all over the world? It's that time again. We are going to talk about a new deck, and today we're going to do something I really like. We're going to take a well-known competitive deck, put it in the mixer, put like a screw on it, push the button, and we will transform it in a nice janky budget brew. And this time we are going to do Janky Tron. Before we start, I'm going to give you a little bit of information because we build casual budget decks here around 50 euros, $50. I also don't play more than 6 mythics, and I don't play more than 3 playsets of 1 card. Why do you do this? Why make it so complicated? Well, this is a nice restriction, and if I build all my decks with those restrictions, then they also play pretty well balanced against each other. At least that's what I found out. So nice to play some gauntlets, to play some little tournaments with all those decks against each other. Now, our good friends at Cardmarket, they say, Bram, you're doing a good job. We're gonna give you some more vouchers. And if you haven't tried out Cardmarket, it's the best platform in Europe to trade some cards, to buy some singles. Really good, works super fine, very safe as well. You can find me on there as well if you wanna buy some cards from me. I am this screen name. And if you want to try it out or win a voucher, the only thing you need to do is subscribe to my channel, and you need to do something more. You have to put in the comments which competitive brew you want to see me transform in a Jank Fest, in a budget Jank Fest like I'm going to do with this Tron build, and I promise you it's going to include some cards you never heard of. It's a promise. So for those who don't know where the name Tron comes from, it comes from the word Urza Tron, as the most important cards in the deck are the Urza lands. As you can see behind me, I'm in Urza territory right now. Well, there was an old cartoon back in the 80s, and that was called Tron. It was about this huge robot that consisted of other pieces, and when they came together it made him stronger. So that's what is actually going on right here as well. So that's why it's Urza Tron, and in short it's just Tron. Now, normally I would start with the flavor of the deck, the basic lands. But there are some lands that are even more important than the basic lands. So let's have a look at those Tron lands. I play 4 Urza's Mine, 4 Urza's Power Plant, and 4 Urza's Tower. Now, if they're on the battlefield by themselves, they just give me 1 colorless mana. But if they're all together on the battlefield, they provide an extra mana. And the tower even provides 2 extra mana. So 3 lands can give me 7 colorless mana. And the good thing is, they're not even legendary, so you can play a lot of them. Now onto the basic lands. I do play some forests here in this deck, and I really like this art from Geo Hao Han. I probably butchered this guy's name. It's from Ikoria, and I like a little bit the energy theme and the mystical glowing butterflies. I think this is a deck full of energy, and this forest depicts this well. Now, we don't need a lot of colored mana in the deck, so I only included 1 Savage Land and 2 Mirrodin's Core. This land comes into play untapped on turn 1, which can be useful from time to time if I want to play my small artifacts. And I also included 1 Sanctum of Ugin to get some big creatures that I'm going to talk about later. Now, I also included 1 Cascading Cataracts. This is extremely useful, and also I will explain a bit later why. Now, I don't play a lot of lands, but I do play a lot of ramp and mana fixing. As I'm already on my maximum with 4 playsets of the Urza land, I play a variety of search and fixing. Expedition map and Sylvan Scrying search for any land, so we're mainly going to look for the Urza lands. And as lands are colorless, Ancient Stirring is also very useful in the deck. It can search for lands, but also colorless cards. The following cards help me turn my colorless mana into colored mana and also draw me some cards. Now on to a bunch of different creatures. Golos Tireless Pilgrim isn't the most aggressive creature in the deck, but it helps to search for lands and put them into the battlefield tapped. So it can search for one of the Urza lands or the Cascading Cataract to use its second ability. If we take the combination of the 3 Urza lands and Cascading Cataracts, we have exactly the amount of mana we need. 7 mana with 5 different colors to activate Golos is extremely powerful second ability. So for this 7 mana you can exile the top 3 cards of your library and you may play them this turn without paying their mana cost. We play 3 green creatures in the deck and the first 2 are great versus aggressive decks. Thragtusk gains you 5 life and creates an extra beast when it dies, and Fragrant Marauder is amazeballs with all the mana fixing artifacts. A weird worm but a big worm from Cold Snap is the Panglacial Worm. It's a big 9/5 with trample, which you can cast when you search your library. And with Sylvan Scrying, Golos and the Expedition map you will do that a few times. Now mostly if you think big creatures you think the Eldrazi. Now most of the Eldrazi from the competitive build are just too expensive. And I already put a lot of Eldrazi right here in this deck, check it out later. But I do wanna include some cheap Eldrazi in this deck as well that are really good. Let's have a look. All Eldrazi are colorless. And this is also the case for Worldbreaker, even though it does have some green mana in its casting cost. It exiles artifacts, enchantments or lands when you cast it, and you can even get it back from your graveyard into your hand. Endbringer is another ultra flexible Eldrazi. 5/5 is not huge, but with all the mana you have, and you'll have a lot, you can use all its abilities, and they're really good. They do damage, impact combat, and they can even draw you cards. And then we also play a Bane of Bala Geth. And Bala Geth, that's a wasteland on Zendikar, if you're wondering. But that's not important.
Nope.
We are here to talk about the cards. And when this big boy attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents. And with the Urza lands, this can happen as early as on turn 4 if you get lucky. Meteor Golem is another fun colorless card that deals with just about anything for 7 mana. And the Soul of New Phyrexia is maybe one of those obscure cards you never heard of. Well, it's a 6/6 with trample that can give your whole board indestructibility. And this is pretty neat. Steel Hellkite also makes great use of our mana. It can increase its power for 2 colorless mana, and when it attacks it can even destroy non-land permanents of your opponent if it's dealing damage. Now the last creature is one that does just one thing: trample your opponent, smash face. Let's have a look. This one is called Colossus of Akros, and to play and activate it, it will cost you 18 mana. But in a Tron deck, this really can be done on turn 5 or 6 or 7. And it can give your opponent a really big problem. Now this Tron deck can play fast with big creatures, but it could also do a little bit of a controlling game. The deck plays a copy of Spatial Contortion to deal with aggressive creatures and Score from Existence to deal with just about everything. All is Dust is also an awesome include as we play mostly colorless creatures. It will affect our opponent more than us, and they have to sacrifice them, which is an effect that is hard to defend against. Now this card was really expensive back in the day, but it actually became a lot cheaper. And you can get it for a few euros now. It destroys the whole board for 8 mana, and later in the game you can use it in combo with the Soul of New Phyrexia to protect your stuff and kill only your opponent's stuff.
Hit that combo!
So we already had some obscure cards you probably never heard of, maybe the Soul of New Phyrexia or the Fangren Marauder or the Panglacial Worm. Well, here is another one. Altar of Shadows is expensive, but its ability is just made for the Urza lands deck. As you can pay Tron mana to kill a creature every turn, and it even gets cheaper while you do this. Now, what else can you do when you have a lot of mana? I know what you're thinking, burn face. So what better card to include than Banefire? It's a removal spell, but it also can be a win condition because you have so much mana. And this can also be set from this card. Cut is ideal in the early game to deal with smaller aggressive creatures, and Ribbons can close out the game when you have a ton of mana out. Now you can see I already put a lot of goodies in this deck, but there are some more extras to close out the game or to do a little bit of tricks here and there. This one is a simple one. You just tap your Urza's Tower and draw a card. Very good versus control decks. Another card that is great versus control decks is this Snake Basket. Actually, Snake Basket is also a card, you can see it here, but I'm going with the Orochi Hatchery. When you play this one for 8 or 10 mana, it can give you an army of snakes each turn, which is great and also a nightmare for the control player who will quickly fold to an unanswered hatchery. If you already saw my Ooze deck, you know I like slime, and it's also a neat win condition. 11 mana gives you, for example, 5/5/5 Ooze tokens, which is pretty normal in this deck. Are you liking my extras? Well, here's another one. An obscure mythic from Aether Revolt is Planner Bridge. Yes, it costs 8 mana to activate, but we don't care, we have plenty of mana. And you can use it to search for a creature or for an Oblivion Stone. The only Planeswalker I play that is also a budget card is Ugin the Ineffable. This bad boy costs 6 mana and comes into play with 4 loyalty. It has a static ability that makes colorless spells cost 2 less, which is awesome in the deck. For its +1 ability you can exile the top card of your library face down and look at it, create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token, and when that token leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into your hand. Then for its -3 you can destroy target permanent that is 1 or more colors. Now the last card you probably never put in a deck. Well, I didn't do it either until now and I just wanted to try it out. Reap the Past gets back a lot of cheap artifacts, maybe an Oblivion Stone or maybe even some removal or creatures. I wanted to try out the Super Regrowth for the late game. Only too bad it's not an instant. So this was my Janky Tron deck. Now let's head into the power rankings. It's pretty obvious that this deck can do a lot of powerful things. And although this version may be less consistent than its more expensive tournament version, it's definitely more diverse and fun. It also plays well offensively and defensively, and when it has set up its pieces, it can be a hard-hitting deck. Versus aggro decks, it's probably the most delicate, as it's hard to defend yourselves in the early game while setting up your Tron pieces. Most mid-range decks will just get smashed by the power of this deck, and against a control player, if you take your time, you can have a pretty good matchup. Cards like Golos, Orochi Hatchery, Endbringer and Arcane Encyclopedia are great draws versus the control matchup. And against combo decks, it will be a coin flip who gets the setup the fastest. Normally I would be announcing the winner of the card market voucher, but just give me a second. I do want to give you some a little bit more expensive cards to put in the deck in the maybe board. Karn Liberated is a very strong planeswalker that is in the modern version of this deck. Ugin the Spirit Dragon is also quite pricey in terms of euros, but playing this bad boy on turn 4 is mostly game over for your opponent. So it will increase the fun for you,
Yeah, boy.
and it will certainly decrease the fun for your opponent.
Oh no!
Because the deck can search up lands, you can also include Merit Lage as a win condition. And for this you need to play Dark Depths, a land that needs a lot of mana to be activated, but we already know that's not a problem. A cheaper way to kill your opponent is to throw some expensive artifacts at its head. So for this you can include Bosch the Iron Golem. And the last card I wanted to mention is also an older one. It's called Reap and Sow, and you can use it to search lands, but also it can be a land destruction card. Now the nice thing I like about these sorts of decks, like I already did with my Polyworm deck or with my Eldrazi Descendants Path deck, is it has a shell. This time it's with the Urza lands and a lot of the mana fixing and mana artifacts. But what you put in the deck as a win condition or as big creatures, that's up to you. You can even choose the different colors, it just doesn't matter. So it's a really fun shell to build around, and also let me know in the comments what you like to put in. Now let's find out who is the lucky Timmy and who will win the card market voucher. Congratulations! Check out in the comments how to reach me to get your €10 voucher. So this was the deck. If you want to win a voucher, let me know in the comments which competitive deck you want to see me transform in a crazy brew in a complete jank fest. And as always, keep it casual.